Good afternoon. We'd like to welcome you to today's program, Empowered to Lead Black Lawyers on Pathways to Success, sponsored by the Women in Law section, the Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and the Committee on Continuing Legal Education of the New York State Bar Association. This afternoon's program will run from 4 to 5 p.m. And during today's program, if you would like to pose a question to today's panel, please feel free to use the chat function located in your Zoom portal. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn it over to today's moderator and the current chair of the Women in Law section, Fretra da Silva, to get us started with some opening remarks. Fretra?
Thanks, Ernesto, and thank you for all of your effort in putting this together. I think I'm still on screen. Oh, okay. Things are moving around. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I believe that it is an exciting time, and I hope it continues to be an exciting time to celebrate Black History Month, and especially in this manner to speak with dynamic Black lawyers. Welcome to Empowered to Lead Black Lawyers on Pathways to Success. As chair of the Women in Law section, we are a section of the New York State Bar Association that is focused on the advancement, not only for women, but all people in their professional, legal, and personal matters under the law. We hope that you will check out our website on NYSBA's website. Women in Law section has many ways that people can get involved, whether it be working on some of our programming like this. Men and women work together on our Champions Committee. We have Development and Sponsorship Gender Issues Committee, General Counsel's Committee, and Legislative Committees looking at some of the legislation that can impact women under the law. Many ways that people can get involved, and we hope that you will sign on to our website and take a look. We also publish Wills Connect, which is our annual or semi-annual publication on various issues, and that can also be found on the NYSBA website. We have several upcoming events for Women's History Month, specifically Judging Justice, Women on the Bench, which will be moderated by Judge Tanya Kennedy. The Power of Participation, Women in Leadership in NYSBA. And then we'll have a virtual book club, A Protest History of the United States, authored by Gloria Brown Marshall. In April, we have litigation with Gen AI presentation, which I believe is led by Thomson Reuters. And then, Ernesto, do we have one other April event that's mentioned or no? That's it?
That's all.
Great. Well, everything that is about women in law the Women in Law section can be found on our website. So please go on and see what we're doing, see what we're about, and we hope that you can join us for other events. Now for today's event, I want to welcome our panelists and thank them as well as you for joining us. First, I want to introduce you to the panelists, and then we'll get started. First, Nicole Arrindell. Nicole is Government Relations Counsel and Chief of Staff to the Chief Legal Officer at Equitable, Fortune 500 financial services company, headquartered in New York. Prior to Equitable, Nicole was Associate General Counsel at the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs, Senior Staff Attorney, Mobilization for Justice, and Chief of Staff to the New York State Assembly member, a New York State Assembly member. Before law school, she worked in Washington, D.C. at Fannie Mae and at a national nonprofit organization. Nicole is a frequent speaker and moderator of her tech talk, Everyday People Can Be Everyday Leaders, available on YouTube. So please check that out. I plan to. Nicole has been awarded numerous fellowships and awards, including from the Legal Council on Legal Diversity, the Legal Diversity Fellowship, a 40 Under 40 Rising Star in New York City. Nicole is president currently of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association, the largest Black Lawyers Association in New York State. She's a graduate of Cleveland State University College of Law. She has a master's in public administration degree. and a Bachelor of Science in Media Studies from the University of Illinois. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank
I
you,
also want to welcome, sure. I also want to welcome Patrick Bradford. Patrick is founding member of Bradford Edwards LLP. The firm was established in New York City in 2020 and opened its Los Angeles office in January 2025. Patrick's practice is focused on complex commercial litigation in federal and state courts, corporate investigations, and representing clients before government regulators. He leads the firm's antitrust practice and has taught as an adjunct professor of antitrust law at Fordham Law School and a visiting lecturer in antitrust law at Howard Law School. Patrick represents corporations and individuals in commercial disputes and in connection with investigations initiated by the SEC, FINRA, and the DOJ. His work includes FCPA investigations nationally and internationally. He also represents clients before New York City and New York State regulators. He represents corporations before the FTC and the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. In over 30 years of practice, he has worked in many industries, including media, entertainment, manufacturing, travel, and it goes on. And he led a group of African-American antitrust lawyers in filing an amicus brief in the U.S. Supreme Court in support of the Division I college athletes NCAA versus Alston. Patrick earned his JD from New York University Law School and his Bachelor's of Arts from Harvard College. He's admitted to practice in New York, New Jersey, and the District of Columbia. And he has taught law and technology at Columbia University, and he lectures at Yale Drama School. And there's one thing missing on here, that Patrick is a lifelong friend, Fretra de Silva, or Fretra Miller, as he knows. Lastly, but not least, certainly, I want to introduce Camille Joseph Varlack. Camille is Chief of Staff, Deputy Mayor for Administration and Special Counsel of New York City. Alongside managing the day-to-day operations of the mayor's office, Joseph Varlack has led the administration's humanitarian response to the influx of asylum seekers and migrants, coordinates the citywide natural disaster and storm management, and oversees a portfolio of 11 offices, agencies, and commissions. She previously served as Senior Advisor for Operations to the Chancellor of the New York City Department of Education. She was a founding partner and former Chief Operating Officer of a litigation boutique, where she led the firm's business advisory, employment, risk, and crisis management practices. Joseph Varlack also served in the New York State Executive Chamber as Deputy Director of State Operations, Chief Risk Officer, and Special Counsel, managing the operations, general policy development, and related implementation for 60+ New York State agencies and authorities. A lot to juggle. Thank you for joining us, all of you. Now, after that introduction, I'm going to ask you to kind of tell us, give us the more personal points about your background. What inspired you to pursue law? If there are any pivotal moments as a law student or as a young lawyer, and anyone. But we'll start in alphabetical order as I went. What about Nicole?
Sure. Thank you again, Fretra, for the invite to participate today. And thanks to the New York State Bar Association for this opportunity to talk to the next generation of lawyers, which is something I really enjoy doing. What inspired me to go to law school? So it wasn't a straight path. I didn't grow up saying I'm going to be an attorney. I loved watching Claire Huxtable on the Cosbys. I was like, she is fly and fabulous. And she was an attorney who still seemed to have this glamorous life and a family. So I did admire people like her, but I didn't grow up with any attorneys actively involved in my family or in my neighborhood. So I did not have that visual growing up. But when I did become a professional after college, I worked for a company called Fannie Mae in Washington, D.C., and I was on the business side of public finance deals. And I would sit in rooms with all of these attorneys and basically usher them through all of the deals. So it was at that time where I said, you know what, I bet I could do what they're doing because they're getting paid twice as much as I am. And it really did have me thinking about law school. But I will say, taking a step back, there had always been things in my life that demonstrated that I was always an advocate. I'd been always involved in community service. I'd been on debate teams, speech teams, all of these different things where I had advocated for a position or a policy or some type of movement. And I think all of those things together really culminated in this idea that that should be the area that I should pursue next in my career. So it wasn't that typical story of I grew up knowing I wanted to do it. It wasn't necessarily that. I mean, I think there was some inkling there because people would always push me towards things that required me to stand up and speak or write. But it wasn't until later that it really clicked for me that I could perhaps be the advocate in, at that time, the deals or for my community in a very different way.
So what about you, Patrick?
Hey, Fredra, thank you. I think this is the second time you've invited me to speak on behalf of this particular committee, and so I appreciate the invitation. My response is really short and much less interesting. My parents always told me I would be a lawyer, and my brother too, and he's a lawyer. He actually works for Fannie Mae. He's worked for Fannie Mae for about 20 years. He's a securities lawyer, principally because we were argumentative, and we grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. Our parents were teachers. And Black lawyers were held, I think, just in great esteem. I think I knew the name of prominent Black lawyers before I met a Black lawyer. And so I just sort of think from an early age, it was a profession to aspire to, principally because I remember my parents and my aunt, my mother's sister, Barbara Jean, talking about Philadelphia lawyers because there were so many Black prominent Philadelphia lawyers that they knew of and talked about. I think it was it was sort of baked into me from being a kid.
I too will echo the thanks for the opportunity to participate. I really do enjoy talking to young people as well. My story, I think, is a little bit more traditional. I did grow up wanting to be a lawyer. I emigrated to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago as a child, and like many immigrants, my mother worked very hard, worked multiple jobs, double shifts, put herself through school. And so I was left home a lot. And I ended up watching a lot of legal shows. And to be perfectly honest, I think I was actually captivated by the drama of the courtroom. I did drama up through college as well. And so this notion of being in front of a jury audience, and just making these arguments and big flourishes, like I just fell in love with the drama of the courtroom. And so decided that I wanted to be a prosecutor and never really did anything else, never really thought about doing anything else, which is something that in hindsight, I would advise young people to do, right? That there's so many things that you can do and so many ways that you can use your law degree. And so really to think about it before going to law school. But once I sort of made that decision, everything that I did in my academic career and even in my extracurriculars were really driven towards that. I was on speech and debate teams. I did mock trial. I did a lot of that work. I majored in English as an undergrad because reading and writing was my strength, and I knew I would need that in law school. And so have never really looked back. I think over the course of my career, I've started to appreciate that you can use your law degree in different ways, right? You can be creative with that. And so I encourage young people to really think about what they want to do and find a path that allows them to really implement the best of who they are in those particular roles.
It's very interesting to hear everybody's stories because it's like we hear other people's stories, we say, oh, you know, kind of similar for me. You know, I'm from Mississippi, like Patrick from Alabama, and from a similar time. And yeah, if you were clever enough and I was a girl, I could be a lawyer. I certainly, you know, I followed my father, who was a preacher, and he didn't want me to be a preacher, I'm sure, because women preachers were not a thing at that time. And like you, Camille, I did theater all of my life, but I tend to be a little shy, actually. And so I don't want to be in front of, I never wanted to be in front of anyone. Um, but like you said, there's so many things that you can do in the law, and kind of found my spot. And it doesn't require me to be out there and talking to so many people or in front of so many people. And I'm comfortable with that. So it's good.
And Fletcher, I'd
So
also add, it's just like there's so many things you could do before the law, because I don't know where the audience is coming from, but I spent 10 years working before I went to law school. So just having had the kind of life experience and work experience I had prior to going to law school really helped to inform the decisions I made post law school about the types of opportunities that I would seek out. And so I would just really point this to anyone on the call who has had a life before law school, someone who might be a non-traditional law student, that all of that life experience and work experience prior to law school, it doesn't leave you. You don't leave it behind after you get the JD. That should be your full package that you're presenting to potential employers. And that's something that has been very, very helpful to me, to package the full self along with the law degree to go and pursue many opportunities. And I've had a diverse set of opportunities post law school, I think really because of that the prior year's experience. So I just want to urge anyone on the call who has had a different life before, let's not negate any of that. Use that and along with the law degree to pursue whatever it is you're looking to do.
that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Now, as it is, you know, Black History Month, I wanted to kind of focus in on any challenges along the way that you have faced, particularly because as being a Black lawyer, and how you overcame those challenges.
So I'll jump in and say two things. One, just to very quickly piggyback on what Nicole said, I actually went to law school at night and worked full time. And so the experience that you have is that you are typically going to school with individuals who are doing their second career, right? They've got full-time jobs. We had folks that were commentators on Bloomberg, who were firefighters, the whole gamut in terms of experience. And I think the year that I graduated, the last 3 valedictorians of our class had been evening students. And I say that to say that experience, that life experience, and bringing it to the table is absolutely something that will make you a better law student. So I just wanted to underscore that. I completely agree with you, Nicole. In terms of me, I have to tell you that, and I'm not sure if it's my Caribbean upbringing, I don't know if I've had difficulty as a black person, as a Black woman in my experience, because I refuse to let anything be a boundary, right? And so I have moved through my careers, I have moved through my life, fully expecting to be the best, right? My mother instilled in me that excellence is just the standard. It's not about a Black standard. It's not about a female standard. It's just the standard. I've always operated in that way. And to the extent that I ever ran into a roadblock, I just moved through it. And so it's very possible that there have been limitations that people have tried to put around me. But I think for the most part, I've been able to accomplish anything that I've wanted to accomplish, because I refuse to see any limitations. And I'm not saying that seeing yourself as a Black person or a Black woman means that you are seeing yourself in a limited way, but I'm just saying I refuse to be put in any boxes. And so, as I speak to young people, I say all the time, there are going to be many instances where you will be the only, right? And in my mind, great. let me be the only. I'm going to be here. I'm going to say what I have to say. Like, I'm not going to be limited by anyone, not in my voice, not in how I move, not in how I operate, not in terms of experiences that they want to give me. I'm going to do the thing that I want to do. And I strongly encourage all of our young people to do that as well, because quite frankly, everybody else is, right? All of the others, they're doing whatever the hell they want, whether they have the experience or they don't have the experience. So, in my mind, you should just attack everything that you do with grace and respect and dignity and excellence and education. You have to come with all of those things, but do not allow yourself to be defined by anybody else.
Yeah, I would just say that, similar to Camille, if there has been a challenge because of my Blackness, I am not aware of it. If anything, I feel like being the only Black woman lawyer in many spaces has been more of an asset for me than it has been a liability. And I have been very good about being able to leverage what is my unique value proposition in whatever room I'm in. I'm going to let people know what are my strengths. I am going to make sure those things shine. I'm going to build genuine relationships with people. And honestly, that's how I've operated as well. And that's what's been able to help me move into the different industries I've been in, the different spaces I've been in. I really have never let that my Blackness be a barrier. Not me. I haven't let it be a barrier, much like Camille. Like, if somebody was doing something because of the fact that I was Black, I am unaware of it because I've continued to excel and because I'm producing excellence. And so that hasn't been a hurdle for me.
Yeah, so I think all that's terrific. The panelists are all incredibly successful. Let me just say this. I think it's important for younger people to think about what is success, right? What is success? And as it has been alluded to, there are many ways to use a law degree, and finding what you like to do within the law and trying to be successful in a way that you want to work, I think is important. I do think that the younger generation, and I'm old now, but I think the younger generations, maybe I should say plural, of Black college students, high school students, law students, can sometimes let challenges overwhelm them. And those become the hurdles. And those challenges, I do believe, can come in many ways having nothing to do with your ability to do the job. Some people did not hire me because they did not like something about me. Maybe it's the fact that I talked about NBA hoops in my interviews. Maybe they didn't like that, or maybe that was just a proxy for something else that they'd rather not say. I'll never know, because all you need is one job and one opportunity. So there may be doors that close, but you need to try to find the one that you can walk through that's open for you so that you can enjoy success. But one thing that Nicole and Camille have alluded to, which I think is incredibly important when we talk about the issue of challenges based on being a lady or being a Black lady or whatever, and that is to be prepared. So I grew up on Wall Street, as did Fretra. She started her career on the street in a major firm. And I know for a fact that there were many Black women who were at my firm who had different challenges than I had. Different challenges because they were Black women specifically. Most of them much more intelligent than me, I will tell you. But the joy of it is that even though they may not have stayed to make partner there, I'm looking around now at some of my dear friends from my first job on the street, and they are general counsel of Simon and Schuster. They are associate general counsel of Showtime. You know, they are head of litigation at a major Wall Street bank. And so as you're coming up, I think the most important thing is to be prepared, take advantage of all the opportunities that you can to do as well as you can in law school, to get the summer internships that will give you experience. And as you begin your life in whatever capacity, in your first job, whether it's at a firm or a clerkship, which is very important, I think, to always try and learn to develop the skills, because once you have those skills, they can't be taken away from you. And here's a note to the new generation, and you know, I know that that Fretra and Nicole and Camille, that all of them, you know, because I certainly know Fretra and Camille and their backgrounds. I'm meeting Nicole for the first time, but I can tell from her success. When your senior lawyers are critiquing your work, when they're critiquing your work, when you hand in a memo and it comes back and it's all marked up, please see that as a sign of encouragement. The new generation, and this is my personal experience, the new generation sometimes wants to think that just because they did well in school, when they get out, you know, everything is going to be perfect. So at my law firm, Camille founded the law firm with me in May of 2020. So she was here when we had students coming through. One of the things we try to do is we try to make sure that each of our summer leaves with a significant writing assignment, something that they could hand to a judge or to a potential employer. And I usually give them each an antitrust assignment because antitrust is hot and because there are a number of top topics. But after the first couple of summers, I now have to preview for our summers that when they give me their memo, it's going to come back looking like railroad tracks, like blood is spilled all over it. I have to prepare them for this and remind them that I've been doing this for 30 years and may know a little bit more about antitrust law than they do. But the reason that I'm doing it is because I want them to improve. I want them to develop their skills. I'm giving them the same thing that was given to me when I was on the street and thought I was going to get fired every day. And so I usually tell them at some point, if I didn't care about your development as a lawyer, the development of your skills, I would just tell you it's great. High five. So if that's what's going on, then there's a problem. So I encourage the younger generation to take constructive criticism as it is meant, which is constructive criticism so that you can become better, so that you develop your skills. And then when opportunities present themselves, you have what you need to be able to walk through a door, an opportunity that's presented to you.
So
I
Fretra,
remember
here's the
this.
real challenge. That's the real challenge. Dealing with rejection, dealing with not being seen as the best every time. That's what's the reality of going out into this legal field for the first time. I mean, of course, there might be barriers because of race, but I think the real challenge is that we have law students on this call who might not be at the top of the class right now, who might need to work on their writing skills, who might not have a hard enough skin to take the criticism. And I want them to know that they have to start building up that resilience as a leadership trait, because it's honestly, you're going to face a lot of rejection. You're going to have failure. You're going to make mistakes in this field. And what I think is really going to come to bear is how you bounce back from that. So I would say that herein lies the real challenge. This is not an easy field to be in. And you're making this conscientious decision to go to law school, but it's going to come with those things that Patrick just talked about. It's going to come with a sea of red on your paper when you got, the highest A all through law school. It's going to come with people saying, even though you got the highest A in law school, we're still not hiring you. Or the people who might have the average grades, you having to figure out what your hustle is to prove and demonstrate that you can get the job done, even though you have the average grades. That's the challenges that you all are going to be facing as law students who are trying to navigate and become lawyers. So I think that was great that Patrick highlighted those pieces.
Completely agree. And I think I would add, I had a conversation with a team the other day where I essentially said, there are a lot of butter knives on this team, and I need a steak knife. You need someone who is sharp, who is going to work, who's going to get it done, right? You can be as smart as you think you are, but you could be outworked every single day of the week. And there is just no shortcut to working extremely hard. And so, I used to joke with Patrick, if I call one of the interns and they come into the office and they're on their damn phone, as opposed to with a pad and a pen, ready for the direction, the learning, the thing that they're going to get, right? That shows me that you're not ready, right? Like, you have to be ready all the time. That's what it is. And in this world right now, with everything that we're dealing with, particularly on the federal level, right, and the impact of DEI and all of that, and the perceptions that are out there, most of which is completely incorrect, if not all of it, right? I think that young people, because I don't want my earlier comments to be perceived as being dismissive of the fact that, yes, there are people who are going to be limited. There are people who are going to be put in a box because of their race. But the point is that you have to control what you can control, and you have to move in directly, firmly, harder, stronger. You have to just keep driving. And so, you can't allow them to put you in a box. You have to just fight and move forward at all times.
Now, I'm going to introduce one hurdle that I recall, and that was exposure, and really having a clear idea of what I wanted to do. I entered a law firm, but I had no exposure to anyone who had ever worked in a major law firm. And I was competing, if you will, against associates who came in with this plan. This is what I want to do. This is the kind of law I want to practice. And I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and work for whomever. Is there any advice you have for, someone who doesn't have a family, who has lawyers or has been exposed to any lawyers ever in life? Because that certainly touches our community quite a bit.
Call me or call somebody on this panel. We're all publicly listed. There are too many Black lawyers out here. And by the way, not just Black lawyers. I mean, there are allies, right? I mean, as I think about my legal career and the individuals who are responsible for pushing me forward, I mean, of course, it's going to be your parents and your church and all those things in the background to get you to the point. But when you get to the point of saying you're going to go here or go there, it may well be a Black person, but it may not. It may be an ally. And you don't know, again, there can be, as Judge Higginbotham used to say, there can be positive criticism and there can be negative criticism, right? And you don't know what's going to come. But certainly, at the point of, well, what are my options? What kind of law is there? I know I want to be a lawyer. Do I want to be a corporate lawyer? What is a corporate lawyer? They don't teach it in law school. They teach it more so now than they did before. But within my little Alabama family, someone could talk to me and could talk to my brother and at least know the difference between litigation and corporate securities law. So And by the way, sometimes I find that our young people don't want to do that. They don't want to reach out. They don't. Sometimes even the children of friends of mine, the parent will say, "Well, call Patrick," and it'll be 3 months later, and it'll be this sort of sheepish thing. And we have to understand. I mean, if I get a call or communication from any child of a person I know, regardless of the race, I'm probably going to respond in the best way that I can. And so one answer to the question is seek out someone who can tell you what the options are or your options are. And you can start with the panelists here. I mean, our emails are public knowledge. Now, if I got a trial going on, I don't get back to you until the weekend, Sunday at 3 a.m. because that's the time that I have. Those are just the realities of practice, but you gotta reach out because people do, even people who don't necessarily know you personally, want to see you do well. We want to see you advance. We want to see you succeed and continue in the profession and in all aspects of the profession. I mean, there are 4 people on this panel, and everyone is successful in a slightly different way.
I think I would say what I've said to my 18-year-old son. You are walking around with a $1,000 computer in your pocket, which is your iPhone. And the fact of the matter is that computer is the gateway to just about anything. When I wanted to go to law school, I think the internet was damn near created when I was in college, right? We didn't have the access to all of this information, to these bar associations, to all of these associations that are designed to give young people advice, counseling, internships, opportunities. There is absolutely no reason why you can't use that device separate from shopping, going on the internet, TikTok, and all the other things, right? To use it for a force of good, which is to access all the information you need. YouTube, if you want to, what is it like to be a corporate lawyer? You can go right on YouTube and figure that out. Who are the minority law firms that are in New York City? You can get a list of them, right? But it all comes back to, you got to be working hard, you got to be focused, and you have to be driven, right? I think it oftentimes is generational. Folks expect things to come to them. And that is just not the way that the world works. You have to go out there and take what you want. If there is information that you are seeking, there are just so many opportunities that exist now for young people to get the information, to get the access, to get the opportunity. And to Patrick's point, participation in a panel like this is a good example. Folks should be asking for our contact information, following up afterwards. I've given out many a business card and never heard from a young person again, right? You got to be diligent. You got to stay on top of it.
Now, that's a good point. I mean, how do you have practical tips for students to build those networks, those professional networks and mentorships and finding advisors?
Well, one easy way that is free is joining a bar association. You can join bar associations right now as a law student for $0. And even if you don't have the time to go to all of the events or CLEs or programs, let me tell you what you will get just by even having access to those organizations and getting the emails from those organizations. You will start to get emails about panels, different areas of practice. You'll start to see who the players are in those practice areas. You'll start to see what firms, organizations, and companies are represented amongst those speakers. This is how you start to develop a list of who should be the people you need to proactively reach out to on LinkedIn or go to that reception to try to connect with so that you can get the mentors in the space that you think you want to practice in or any other area. Because quite frankly, when you're in law school, you're not a lawyer. You should know all the lawyers and all the lawyers know each other. So even if you claim you want to do international law and I don't do that, I have 5 friends who do. So you need to get to know me anyway. So I would say that the Bar Association is like one of the easiest ones to be able to access that. And many of those organizations have mentoring programs built in, or sponsorship programs, or some type of way for you to connect with lawyers. I would really advise that you try your best to connect with as many attorneys as you can to start building up your legal network. One thing that helped me when I was in law school, I went to law school in Ohio, but I knew I was going to be practicing in New York. I joined the bar association, that all the bar associations that were in New York City. I set up an email account just for getting those emails so that I could start to understand who was on panels. Wow, look at Patrick Bradford and Camille, right? Like I could see that these are the players in New York City. And I was very proactive about reaching out to individuals who were in the city where I wanted to practice. So I would recommend that to anyone who might be attending law school in one place, but know that they want to be somewhere else. That's a great way for you to start to understand the people and the organizations. And honestly, when you're in law school, I find people say very generic things like, I want to do corporate law, I want to be a tax lawyer, I want to do environmental. You don't really know what any of that means. So you start to look at the CLEs and you could see what are the specific topics that people are talking about on the panels. So then you get an understanding of, oh, there's regulatory risk, there's litigation. You can start to understand the areas. And I would use that as a tool. So many times that's the hard part. The second piece is that your law school likely has some sort of mentorship program, or opportunities for you to connect with alums through some sort of reception or other events. Third, the adjunct professors who are in your law school. That's probably one of the best resources. I'm an adjunct at Cardozo Law School, and I feel like I always bring in the real perspective because I practice law all day throughout the day. And so I have real contacts. I have real context of what really happens in the cases that we study. So I would say those are 3 resources right there that are very easy, accessible to you, where you could start to get to know people. And like to Camille's point, you have to do the follow-up. That follow-up could be as easy as connecting to me on LinkedIn and asking for 30 minutes of my time that we may have to figure out, a few weeks out, but that has to be that next piece. How do you start making that connection? It's by you being proactive.
Now, we talked a lot about being proactive, being out there. And one thing that I think we talked about earlier was preparedness. Part of that is planning. Part of that is setting appropriate goals and objectives. Are there any tips or, key points that you would provide to young lawyers or students in that regard?
Hey, one of the most important things to recognize as a law student is that law school tends to reward those who get it fastest. So your first year grades end up becoming what you show to your employers, potential employers, for your second year summer, and that second year summer can lead to a job. And so most people get better at a skill. So you may find that your best grades come in your third year. And if you're running the traditional race, you may not be able to benefit from an improvement in your grades because so much happens based on those first year grades. So one thing is to think about maximizing your ability to do well during the first year. And for that, you have to realize that the law, as taught in law schools, is not reinventing the wheel. So if you think that sort of just going to class and taking notes and reading your textbook is enough, being diligent, and you don't use the aids that are out there, and I don't mean things like Nutshell and whatever, and they're fine, but things like horn books that real lawyers use. So if you're in law school in your first year, you should do all of your reading. You should attend all of the classes. That's the minimum. And then you should go to the library and ask the librarian, okay, what treatise or hornbook do you have for contracts? And when you come across concepts in contracts that you don't understand, go to the treatise and see if you can figure it out. You know, have it explained in simpler terms so that you can understand it, because fight for understanding. And then if the professor who you're taking has been there a while, they may have back exams. You should definitely look at the practice exams, and you may even find outlines that were done by other students in the Balsa office or others who took that same course from that same professor a year before or 2 years before. So trying to maximize your ability to do well in law school in that first year is a process, but it's not a process that's opaque. I mean, there's so many objective things to do in order to try to maximize that first year. Now, let's say that first year goes okay, but not as well as you thought. So you get a summer job that second year, but your second year grades you've pulled up and your third year grades are even better. Well, what about a judicial clerkship? Judicial clerkship gives you the opportunity perhaps for another summer, but also the judge will be looking at 2.5 years of your 3 years of grades. And after you clerk, and it could be a state court clerkship or a federal court clerkship, whoever it is, they're going to, as a sitting judge, they're going to know much more than you know. And so you're going to learn something in that process from an experienced lawyer who happens to be a judge. And even if you want to do corporate law, that's okay. All employers, whether they're Wall Street firms or elite not-for-profits, see clerking as a good thing for a whole host of reasons. And you then open up the opportunity for employers to see your full transcript and consider your clerkship. And you might be able to get one of the jobs that's on your list. And one of the reasons I wanted to say this is because there's been so much emphasis on the external things. Yes, you have to be proactive. You cannot be a potted plant if you want to be a lawyer. Something that I tell my students. I teach adjunct at Fordham, and I don't use the old Socratic method. I let people volunteer. And I tell them, and I make it a significant part of their grade. But one of the things I say is, would you want a wallflower lawyer? Someone who is dear to you? If they had a legal problem, would you want a lawyer who wasn't aggressive, who wasn't engaged? What do they say? Lean in, who wasn't leaning in? You got to take a shot. And so, yes, all of the external things are important, right? Right? Your network, asking for help, looking for mentors, etc. But the foundation for all of that is preparedness. And unfortunately, or fortunately, in this profession, when you begin your law school performance, as well as any clerkship that you may receive, can begin your career in perhaps a more advantageous way. Now, that doesn't mean that 20 years later, you're going to be the bomb diggity, right? Someone else may outwork you, and you can't rest on your laurels. And by the way, it's very rare after you've been practicing for 20 years for someone to ask you what law school you went to. They may look it up on your bio, et cetera. People want to know the deals that you've done as a corporate lawyer. People want to know the cases that you've won. And I've been at this long enough to know that there are excellent lawyers from every law school in the country, and I see them every day. And so, yes, you want to do what you can to maximize the start of your career. You want to do the work, and then you want to put in the effort, and then you want to keep an open mind as opportunities come your way.
What about before law school? If we have pre-law students here? I think it gets back in part to using some of the not ignoring and using some of your experiences across the board. A lot of people don't understand that they're going to go to law school, or they might not dream of that. But they have these experiences. I worked initially for an accountant, and then I was an actuarial intern. It kind of makes sense now that I work for a financial institution. It all builds on itself. And I think that is something about taking those experiences and doing the most with them. But planning, thinking through your options certainly is critical.
But
And I
also
think
for the students who might not have done well the first year, because there are people who are like that. I was one of the people like that. I had actually done very well all through undergrad and grad school, and was a dynamic, getting promotions in my career that I had for 10 years before I went to law school. And that first semester smacked me in my face and was like, girlfriend, this is law school. This is not your master's in public policy program, or this is not undergrad where you were crushing it in journalism and economics. This is law school. And I had to assess whether or not it was a good idea that I left my good paying job to go to law school. I had to do a whole calculation on that. But after I did that, I realized what I needed to do to actually start figuring out a study plan and getting myself together so that I can boost my grades for that first year. And I was successful at that. But after that, once classes that were not required, I started to emphasize what I was good at. I was very good at writing, very good at anything that required me to speak. So I took all of the trial practice. I wrote all of the briefs. I did all of those things so I can get the grades to help boost my GPA. So this is my message to the people on here who, that grade, that GPA that you got your first year, you're feeling some kind of way about that, but you feel very committed. And if you have a 2L year, a 3L year, or a 4L year, if you're an evening student, use these next semesters to try to focus on what can you take in the elective space? What externship can you do to get credit for? What clinic can you work in that might be a 4-credit A to help boost your GPA? I think once you get that boost, you have a different set of confidence too when you step out here to interviews, when you send your resume, when you could come and talk to one of us on this call and comfortably say your GPA and not mumble it. That's what you got to do. You got to figure out what that looks like for you. And I tell my mentees this all the time. I'm like, look, I get that, trust in the states is tested on the bar exam. Do you plan to practice in this area? Or can Barbary perhaps give you enough that you need to know to pass the bar exam? Because right now you probably don't need a 4-credit hour C if your GPA is looking a little wonky. So that I just wanted to give the message, because there are some of us who went to state schools, who might have had average grades, but we're doing very well in this profession. And I just want to reassure those who might be on here who are not at the top school, who do not necessarily have the top grades right now. There's a way to work it to try to boost yourself up enough where you can be confident and where you can feel confident enough to sell yourself as you go out here into the market, and you can be successful. And as Patrick said, every law school has had very successful attorneys, judges, corporate leaders, etc. So don't get caught up in the semantics of where you rank and all of those things, because as he said, no one asks me where I go to law school. I live in New York City. Nobody even probably realizes I went to law school in Ohio. They don't ask me about it or what my class rank was. Right now, they ask me, can I work on this deal? Can I set up this strategy? Can I be a beast in this room right here? That's what matters.
Well, we're getting close to time. I know that there is one question that we had submitted, and it's antitrust. And Patrick, I think it's regarding a matter that you worked on. So I'm going to just read part of that question. And given that Justice Kavanaugh's Alston concurrence questioning the NCAA's remaining compensation rules could Could failure to close tax asymmetries, like not reclassifying athlete-derived revenue as taxable unrelated business income for universities, or denying broadcaster deductions under horizontal equity impact, if at all, future antitrust litigation against the NCAA? It's very packed. And the person goes on to explain their question, but you have that. You have that, Patrick.
So Fred, let me just say this. I'm happy to talk offline to the student, because I think the question that just came through about brand impact may be more interesting for the people on the call. But look, my kind of bottom line answer after reading the question, thanks for sending it to me earlier, Fredra, is colleges and universities currently pay coaches, assistant coaches, et cetera, sometimes salaries greater than the NFL, right? That doesn't hinder their not-for-profit status. I don't think there's anything about the Kavanaugh's concurrence that would affect the tax-exempt status of a college or university, because the same way that they use not-for-profit dollars, which is to say money given to a university, the giver takes it on their taxes the way you would if you gave money to your church. If you end up paying the players full freight, or what the market would bear, that would be akin to paying the coaches and the assistant coaches and all the other professionals who are paid except for the athletes. So I don't think that even if Section 1 of the Sherman Act were interpreted to require paying market rate to the players, that would change the not-for-profit status of the university at all. But I'm happy to talk or communicate with the person who had the question, and you can feel free to give them my email. But this question about building your brand, which I think just came across, might be more interesting to people who are listening to the panel.
So it reads, can you speak about creating a brand and the impact of your brand on your career? And I'll just put a plug in for the Women in Law section. We did a seminar, a half-day seminar on building your brand, and that's something you can access, I believe, online. Isn't that correct, Ernesto?
Yes, that Women on the Move program is available on the NYSBA page under our CLE program archives.
And that was in October of 24. So just in case you want to check that out.
I think it's a really, really great question, and something that that I've spoken about, because I think that especially young people, and I'm just thinking even when you're in high school, as you're going into college, with the advent of social media, it's something that they need to be particularly focused on. When I think of a brand, I think of, what is the impression that you want folks to have of you before you even walk into the room? And everything that you do, from the way that you speak, to the jewelry that you wear, to the font that you use in your email, every single aspect of your life helps to contribute, in my mind, to what your personal brand is, how you show up in a space, how you respond to questions. And so as young people, as you're moving into law school, I always think of it as you always have an opportunity to reinvent yourself when you make certain moves within your life. And so right now, if you are in high school, you're going into college, what you like, what you find funny, where you show up, if you have, pictures with you and cocktails on certain pages, right? That social media stuff, that follows you. And I say it as a person who, screens and hires lots of people, and we do background checks, and these things pop up, and I'm just sort of like, this seems to be very inconsistent with the individual that is sitting in front of me applying for this very serious job, right? So I think that is something that we need to be thinking about. I think you need to be thinking about, and I saw somebody alluded to The Practice, which was my show back in law school. Like my classmates and I used to watch that show on Sundays, and we would all be on like a conference call so we could respond to it, right? But who do you see on TV that you emulate, that you think of as the pinnacle of whatever it is, and ask yourself why. Is it the way that they carry themselves? Is it the values, the proposition that they infuse into everything that they do? There used to be a speech that was given on that show when I think Laura Flynn Boyle was sort of like, I think it was Richard Bay, like, tell me why we do this again. And he would give this speech about how there was like a tidal wave of crime that threatened to wash over the city if we did not stand up and do our job. And I remember being an assistant district attorney in Brooklyn, statusing cases at 11 p.m. at night and going next door and saying to someone, I need the speech. Like, I need you to remind me of why we show up here to do this thing. And those things matter, right? The desire to serve the public, right? That is a part of my brand. When I walk into the room, people understand that I am about service. I am about giving back. I take that responsibility very seriously. And that infuses everything that I do because it's consistent. And so, I really encourage people to focus on it, to really think about it, because it is incredibly important. And again, it says so much about you before you even walk into a space. It takes time to develop, and you should constantly be in a position where you want to refine it. But really a great question. And I encourage all young people to really be thinking about it as early as possible.
Well, we've come to the top of the hour, and I want to again thank you all for joining us. We really have appreciated every word, every moment that you've shared with us today. And I don't know if there's anything you want to say before we close off, but please, you're welcome to give a few words, and then we will say goodbye to everyone.
Just want to say again, thank you for having us. To the young people that are participating in the panel, we wish you the best of luck. You should absolutely take us up on our willingness to engage with you. I think all of us are on LinkedIn, so you could certainly find us there. Reference the fact that you attended this panel, because it demonstrates that you're listening to what we said and you're following up on this conversation. And as you move through life, you will have a whole host of experiences, some positive, some negative, and you may not know why you're having that experience, but just trust from people that are senior to most of the folks on this phone, that there is a reason, that there is a purpose, that there is a lesson to be learned, and you should bring that along with you in your life. It will ultimately serve you well. So thank you again, Fretra, for having me, and very happy to see you again, Nicole, and of course, Patrick.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much, Fretra, and best of luck to everyone on the call. I think I would just reiterate that, it's time for you to define your version of success and then start building your brand proactively, as Camille suggested. Start figuring out what you want to do and start building out those relationships with people in those spaces, so that you could start to build up your legal network. And I am happy to connect with anyone after this program.
Thank you. Thank you as always.
Yeah, thank you all. Well, have a wonderful evening. And again, thank you, Ernesto, for organizing everything. And thank you to the New York State Bar Association and our co-sponsors for today. And we hope that you all have a wonderful evening. Thanks again.